Welcome, Greek U Nation, to episode number 417 of the Fraternity Foodie Podcast. I'm your host, Mike Ialon, CEO of Greek University. I'm a speaker and an author. Our fourth book came out a couple of months ago. It's called Using AI to Grow Your Fraternity or Sorority. So go and pick up that book on Amazon. And our fifth book just came out for Christmas. It's called Perseverance and How to Be a Great Fraternity or Sorority Alumnus. So go and check that out. We call these episodes the Fraternity Foodie Podcast because there is nothing like great food to bring college students together. Fun fact, my athletic abilities in high school was very limited. We're talking lacrosse, we're talking track and field, but my true passion, I love the game of baseball. I'm a huge New York Yankees fan. I never really had the skills to compete. Even in high school, I really was no good at baseball, let alone professionally. But our next guest has much better baseball skills than I do, I promise you. After dedicating the initial 22 years of his life to the pursuit of becoming a Major League Baseball player, Damon Lembi pivoted in 1995 to help his father. His father is Walt Lembi, the founder of Learnit. And he did it by investing his heart and soul in Learnit to help individuals gain the knowledge and confidence they need in attaining their professional goals through the value of education. Damon has a deep commitment to the Learnit team, past and present, and the San Francisco Bay Area community as a whole, where he was born and raised. Damon attributes Learnit's longevity and success to the ability to surround himself with A players and taking advantage of learning and evolving through past mistakes. Outside of Learnit, Damon is an avid reader, a moviegoer, and a live music fanatic, which is great, especially that I live in Nashville, Tennessee. Maybe we will see him here in Nashville. Most of all, Damon loves spending time with his wife, his children, Lucy and Wally, and his dog. Welcome to the show, Damon.
Mike, it's great to be here. Thanks for having me.
It is my pleasure. We had a lot of fun chatting even before we hit the record button. So hopefully there's going to be some gems here. I know that you're going to be sharing with our students here on tape as well. Now, I wanted to go back to your undergraduate days because I think this is really interesting. You decided on Arizona State University for your undergraduate experience. Now, I know you had a lot of choices with your baseball skills coming into college. So I need to know what made you decide that ASU was actually the right place for you?
Well, to take it a step back, out of high school, I was drafted by the Atlanta Braves in the 13th round. And that was really, Michael, my first tough decision. Do I go the minor league route or do I go to college? And at the time, I chose to go to Pepperdine. So I started at Pepperdine University out in Malibu. And I really did that. I got a full ride. And I really chose that. One, I think I was a little nervous about going the minor league route so early. But two, I really believed in the vision that the coach, Andy Lopez, had. He said, we're going to win the College World Series. You're going to be a big part of it. And that's quite a vision for a small D1 school. So I went to Pepperdine and, I was homesick and I got hurt and ended up leaving. And sure enough, Pepperdine won the World Series that year. It was incredible. And then I had to spend a year or two at a junior college of San Mateo. And then I was really fortunate, and I ended up at Arizona State, which was a perfect fit for me. I loved Arizona State, played baseball there. My wife's tired of hearing the story, but I hit a home run in the College World Series. And that's how I ended up at Arizona State.
Good for you. What a dream to hit a home run in the College World Series. I mean, that's a beautiful story. It's too bad that things didn't work out at Pepperdine. I'm sure winning a championship would have been really fun. And are you kidding me? I mean, Malibu, I mean, come on, that campus is gorgeous to Pepperdine. Let's be real.
It's beyond gorgeous, but it was a small school. And like I said, I was young for my age, for my grade. I was 17. And as a baseball player, the wind blows in and I was a big hitter. So it just wasn't a perfect fit for me. But even though it was only a year, I learned a great deal from Andy Lopez and from being out at Pepperdine.
Yeah. Well, let's talk about Andy Lopez and some of the other coaches that you played for. You played for 3 D1 coaches. So I'm wondering, what did you learn from Andy and the other 2 coaches that you bring with you into the corporate world today?
Mhm. Yeah, not only were they're all Hall of Fame coaches. So they've all, Hall of Fame. And I didn't realize this at the time, but I just basically learned through osmosis basically how I was going to emulate my leadership moving forward. I learned about, like we talked about, how to set a vision, how to collaborate, how to hold kids accountable. I mean, if you could hold college kids accountable, it should be easier in the workforce. And I learned a lot about discipline as well. Going back to what Coach Lopez said, and I think this goes for your listeners and everybody out there, he said we really have two rules. One is show up on time. There's no excuse for being late. And number two is do the right thing. And kids would be like, well, that's kind of broad. What does that mean? It just means what the difference is between right and wrong. If somebody's watching or not watching, just do the right thing. Don't cut corners, don't do anything unethical. So those are great learning lessons. I also, it doesn't really matter who it is, but I also learned what not to do as a leader from some of the coaches I played for. And one of the biggest takeaways for me really was I played for a coach who, anytime things went well, he took all the credit. Hey, it was a pitching change. I made this decision, and he took all the credit. But when things didn't go well, he kind of put the blame on everybody else. And what I've learned as a leader, whether you're leading a fraternity, you're president of a fraternity, or you're leading an organization like I am now, is I like to give the wins to the people on my team. I like to put them in the spotlight, give them the wins and the encouragement. And then if things don't go well, then I take the blame. Hey, the buck stops with me, and I'll absorb it, and we'll figure out how to make things better and do it next time.
I like that strategy. That's excellent leadership right there. If you want people to kind of go to bat for you, so to speak, pardon the pun, they really need to be recognized. And I think if you recognize them and give them the credit for everything that goes well, they will consistently go to bat for you every single time. And you're right. I mean, if things don't go well, which happens, you and I both know it, when it does, you take the blame for it yourself as the leader, and figure out how do we go forward from here? How do we make progress from here? So I think that's a great leadership lesson. I really like that. And especially doing the right thing. I think that's super important for college students to hear too, because I agree.
Absolutely.
I think they do know right from wrong. And I think sometimes they might have impulses to do things that might not be very smart. So I think, really we want to encourage them to just continue to do the right thing. And if you do that all throughout your career, you're going to end up in a great spot because people are going to trust you. Now, you decided to pivot really in 1995, and you decided to help your father's business. The father's business, of course, is called Learnit. Talk to us a little bit about your dad and who he was. What was his vision for Learnit?
Well, thanks for the opportunity. My dad was Walt Lembi. He unfortunately passed away of cancer about 11 years ago. He was my idol. I was very fortunate. I'm very fortunate still to have my mom around, who's awesome. And anyways, so when after I got done playing at Arizona State, I was ready to move on and continue baseball. I actually got drafted earlier on at the junior college by your favorite team, the Yankees, but really low. So I thought it was going to happen a third time, and I put all my eggs in one basket to be a baseball player. And then all of a sudden that dream just ended. The season ended. And, I could have possibly went the independent route, but it was a big hit to my identity. And I could see how this could relate to your students and listeners as well, is because, it's a big transition from college life to maybe getting a job to getting out into the business world. And so it was a challenge for me. I thought I was of myself as my identity as a baseball player. And now I had to do something different. I was really fortunate. I come from a family who had many businesses. We were one of the largest real estate companies in San Francisco. And at the time, and I'm, dating myself a little bit, but back in the early 90s, computers weren't what they were today. They were just getting off the ground. And my dad wanted to digitize our portfolio. So he went and took a class. He thought it was long, sterile, and boring. And like a lot of great entrepreneurs, he got curious and said to himself, there's got to be a better way to do this. There's got to be a way to make it more engaging, more fun, more cost effective for anybody to come. And that's where he came up with the idea for Learnit, short classes that were 2 hours in length. And it just happened to be when my baseball career was ending. And so I I took a job there as a receptionist. And I did that for a couple of reasons, because I wasn't sure if the skills I learned in college and in baseball were transferable. And I also wanted to start at the ground level, so the other 20, 30 people who worked there didn't think of it like, oh, your dad just put you in this position.
Mm-hmm.
I worked really hard, taught classes, did sales, and fast forward 7 years later, took over as the CEO of Learnit, and I've been doing that ever since. And I'm proud to say we've been around 28 years. We're now more of a corporate training company, not just computers. We teach how to give feedback and be in leadership. And over the 28 years, we've helped upskill 1.8 million individuals. So it's been a fun journey and a great learning lessons over the years.
That's really fun. I like that. And you had to reinvent yourself too. I think there's something to be said about that, as I've had to do in my career as well. Things don't always work out the way that we envision when we're in college or even right after college. And sometimes you got to pivot and come up with a new plan for yourself and to reinvent yourself. And that's okay. And I know how painful that probably was for you, because I know baseball was and is a part of your identity. And that's really hard to give up on that, right? Because that's who you are fundamentally. And so you always looked at yourself as a baseball player. And when that dream wasn't going to work out, you had to pivot and figure out another solution. And so I think that's an important lesson, because I'm sure the college students who are listening right now, they probably think of themselves in a certain way. And sometimes you're going to have to pivot. I mean, that's just the world that we live in.
Absolutely. Never in my wildest dreams did I think I'd end up in the education world, and that's why I've been never in my wildest dreams. And things don't always go exactly like you want them to go. And you just got to kind of roll with the punches. And I looked at it like, Michael, I had two options. I could live in the past and I could be a victim. I could make up excuses. I could say, oh, you got injured. That's not the case. My career came to an end. I'm 22 years old. I've got a great opportunity the rest of my life to contribute and make a difference. And so I chose to go all in and a different path that way. And for your listeners out there, yeah, you might be studying something and have a tough time finding a career in it, but you could try something else, or you might take a job and realize that, hey, this isn't what I thought it was going to be. And you want to pivot and keep moving on. It's okay. You're young. You get an opportunity at any age to pivot and change and learn from your mistakes, or learn and find something that, like you and I spoke about beforehand, something that you're passionate about and that you can be really good at.
Yeah.
And that you look forward to go. I mean, sure, sometimes you need to take a job to pay bills, but I always tell my employees, which I'm really proud of, hey, I want you to get up in the morning and want to go to work, be excited about it. And if you aren't, let's figure out what else you can do. And if that means to reinvent yourself, that means then you got to reinvent yourself.
Yep, absolutely. And I like what you said there about doing something that you're really good at. I think that is also really, really important. I see all these, American Idol, for example, the show. I mean, there's a whole bunch of people that want to be great singers, but then they open their mouth and it's just terrible. I mean, it's absolutely awful. So pick something that you're really good at. Right?
Yes.
Because that we can work with, right? And I think everybody who's listening to this conversation right now is good at something. There's something that you're really good at, and that is ultimately what you want to look at in terms of your career and your future. So make sure it's something you're really good at.
and the decision needs to be yours. It can't be, that if your father is a doctor and they really want you to be a doctor, I mean, don't give up. There's a great book called Range by David Epstein, and he uses an example about, specializing or generalizing. And one of the stories he talks about is somebody who they went through medical school and everything, and they were really miserable, right? They were really miserable until they got out of what they wanted, the shadow of what their parents wanted them to be. And they went out and did something on their own and became super successful and really happy.
Yeah. Well, speaking of super successful, you wrote the book called The Learn It All Reader: Mindset, Traits, and Tools. What is a Learn It All leader? What is that?
So, a Learn It All leader, first of all, my definition of a leader, you don't have to lead your fraternity organization or a 50-person team or whatever. I think we're all leaders. I think we all have the ability to be leaders. And it starts with self-awareness and accountability. So first and foremost, we're all leaders. Now, when I talk about a Learn It All leader, Let's look at the opposite. The opposite is a know-it-all, right? A know-it-all. And we all know people who are know-it-alls. You have a conversation with them. They're not really listening to what you have to say. They're stuck in their ways. They're afraid to make mistakes. And they like the status quo, and it's their way or the highway. The learn-it-all leader, what I come up with is somebody who the core traits are: you're humble, you're not afraid to admit when you don't have all the answers, you're curious, you're always thinking about there's other ways to do things differently, you have integrity, like we talked about earlier, and then you have courage. And to me, courage means stepping out of your comfort zone, and not being afraid, Michael, to make mistakes, because that's where real growth happens, is if you get out of your comfort zone and you try things. So to me, a learn-it-all leader is kind of made up of somebody who realizes that they don't have to be the smartest person in the room, that it's okay to be vulnerable, but vulnerable with confidence, right? It's like, hey, you know what? I got this wrong. I need your help. Let's get some diverse opinions in here, but we will figure this out. So that's really, and I talk about that, in my book, just a little bit about, the traits that go along with it, and some actionable items on simple stuff. If I can do it, you can do it too.
Yeah, that sounds like a great book for our fraternity and sorority leaders to pick up. I think that's going to be incredibly helpful for you over your career. So go out and pick up that book. It's called The Learn It All Leader: Mindset, Traits, and Tools. I think you can learn a lot there. Now, the other piece is that I think even, as a speaker who's been out there literally hundreds and hundreds of times in front of 6,000 students at a time, there is no question that I get imposter syndrome. There's no question that there's self-doubt that creeps up. Even as a seasoned speaker, it's so funny. Like every time I'm thinking in my head, like, what if this is the time that I show up and there's nobody in the audience? Like it's never going to happen. But in my mind as a speaker, like that's your worst fear, is that there's nobody in the audience, right? So you have this three-step approach to dealing with imposter syndrome or self-doubt. What steps should we take when we start to feel that self-doubt creep into our brains?
Great question. I think we all have the inner critic, and the self-doubt. And anybody who says they don't, quite frankly, I think they're not being honest with you. And I actually think it's whether it's playing baseball or giving a presentation, it's okay to have a nervous bug about it, right? So before I get to 3 steps, one is you just got to kind of identify and name, like what are you nervous about? What do you think? What is it? And the 3-step approach that I've used from my baseball days all the way through my whole career is step number one is work hard. I'm not saying put in 10 to 14 hours a day, but work hard and put in the effort. Nothing happens without the effort. Number 2 is focus. It's really easy. Let's say, for instance, that you got a big presentation coming up in school and you're scared to death to get up in front of a group, right? It's really easy to procrastinate and work on other things. Oh, I'll work on this homework assignment. But, if it's something that's important and you realize it and it's something that you have doubt about, really focus and put in the deliberate practice. So you're working hard and you're putting in the deliberate practice. Step number 3 is learn and let go. Okay. So it's the day of your presentation. It's get up there and just realize that you've prepared, you put in the effort, you've worked hard, you put in a deliberate practice, and now it's time to learn and let go and just give it your best shot. You're a human. It might go fantastic. It might go terribly, but guess what? You could always learn from every situation like that. And what's the worst case scenario? Somebody's going to laugh. Maybe you get a bad grade. Well, all you could do is the best you can do. And people have their own lives. And I used to worry a lot about, what people thought of me, but you got to learn to put that aside and give it your best give it your best effort, and, kind of celebrate the effort you put into it and focus more on the effort sometimes than the outcome. So work hard, step 1. Number 2, deliberate focus. And 3, learn and let go and just give it your best.
I love it. I absolutely love it. Now, as somebody who's the CEO of a company, I've been executive director of a large national fraternity before. I think for me, sometimes it's difficult to get honest feedback from the team because obviously you're the boss. right?
Right.
You're the one who signs all the paychecks. So they might not be honest with you in terms of giving you real feedback because they're afraid that if they were honest with you, that you're going to fire them or you're going to not promote them or something along those lines. So how do you get honest feedback from your team? And how would a listener get honest feedback from their student organization, such as the members of their fraternity or sorority, if they're the chapter president, for example?
Well, I think it's a great question. And it kind of comes back to being a good listener and also not getting defensive, and overreacting. One of the ways that I'm able to elicit, and I've gotten better at this over the years, trust me, I wasn't fantastic about at this, 15 years ago. Nobody wants to get critiqued and get negative feedback. But one thing that I've done, like with writing my book, I didn't tell everybody I was doing it, but I trusted a couple people, and I'd write a chapter, Michael, and I'd say to somebody, hey, you know what? Can you look this over? I don't really think this sounds great, but I love your opinion overall. So you're kind of eliciting feedback right there. You're kind of saying, hey, you know what? I don't think this is fantastic in itself. Can you provide me your feedback and see what you think? And then when they do come up with it, you listen, you don't become argumentative, and you thank people for feedback. You thank them for doing it. And when you do that and you get in the habit of that, it kind of creates, whether it's your fraternity or like at work, where individuals who work for me feel comfortable and they will give me honest feedback because they know that I'm not going to bite their head off, right? And at the end of the day, and I coach and mentor a lot of individuals, and it's funny, they call me and they say, hey, I got this feedback from this new boss I have, and it's really negative. And I say, well, is any of it true? And they like, I didn't get they say they don't get defensive, but they really do. So catch yourself, listen, and be thankful.
Yeah, that's really good advice there too. One of the things that we're starting to get into in my company is starting to use AI in some really interesting ways in order to grow student organizations like fraternities and sororities. What's your opinion on AI? Do you think that we're going to benefit as a society from AI, or do you think that this tool is going to somehow threaten us in the future?
It's so funny. Last night at dinner, I was speaking to this young lady. We were having a conversation. She goes to USC, I think it's Marshall School, where she's learning to be a screenwriter, and she hates AI. I mean, and just for her work. And me personally, I'm a big fan. I'm a big fan. Just like the previous three industrial revolutions, I believe that, of course, there needs to be monitoring and governance, but I always tell people, you're not going to lose your job to AI. You're going to lose your job to individuals who know how to leverage AI. And I can't speak for how you know better than I do, whether or not students can use it for their papers or whatever it is they can. And I don't think it's the end all be all, but moving forward, Mike, in the future, it's going to be machine and human working together. And there's so many advantages to using AI to cut back on some of the time that you needed to do little things. And I just recommend to everybody to take advantage of the tools that are out there, because you can be resistant of it, but the person next in line is not going to be resistant of it, and you're gonna get leapfrogged.
Wow, I absolutely love it. And you and I are in 100% agreement on that stance. And I loved your quote there. You're not going to lose your job to AI. You're going to lose your job to somebody who knows how to leverage AI. I
Yep.
love that. And that is 100% accurate in my opinion. I think, yeah, I work with a lot of college campuses, and right now they're struggling right now to know what to do with AI. But the best use of it within higher education that I'm seeing is that college professors are basically using the red, yellow, green light approach. Basically saying, okay, I'm going to give you 3 assignments, and the first assignment is going to be, green light, and that means that you can use AI to complete the entire assignment if that's what you want to do. And then the second assignment is going to be yellow, meaning that the first 2 parts of this you can use AI. The last two parts of this assignment, none of this can be using AI. And then the final one is red light. This has to be entirely 100% your own content. And I think by instituting that kind of a system, then we're giving the students the ability to experiment with AI, figure out what AI does well, what it is terrible at, and there are some things that it's really bad at,
That's true.
and then experiment with that to figure out how they're going to use it in their career. I believe that we're doing our students a disservice if we don't give them these assignments to use AI while they're in a college campus, because listen, if you get out in the real world and you're a graphic designer and you're a graphic design major and you find out that AI has completely, replaced you essentially, because now I can use AI to develop a video and get 90% of what I want by asking AI to create me this video with this description. And now that puts you out of work. Like, you should have figured that out in college by experimenting with this AI tool to figure out, hey, I got to figure out a different way forward because my path is going to be, blocked by people who know how to use AI.
And one of the things I would tell your listeners, one of the unique things about Learnit, I get to look behind the scenes for all these different organizations, how their leadership and everything runs. They're all looking in the hiring process now to figure out who has experience using AI.
Wow.
So you don't want to get into the real world and get into the professional world and not have any experience experimenting it with it now. So I can't recommend it enough to start learning and carving out time to get good with it.
Yeah, that's a great recommendation to our listeners. You're hearing it straight from Damon. You should know he's a CEO that expects you to know how to use AI when you come into his company. And I think that's really, really important for you to understand. Whether you like AI or you don't like AI, none of that really matters. What really matters is, do you know how to leverage this tool? Because if you don't, somebody else is going to come in and take your spot that knows how to leverage it. And so that's just a brutal reality of the world that we're living in. And so I agree with you 100%.
And it's not just me as a CEO, it's the customers we work with,
sure.
And these are conversations I have on a regular basis.
Yeah.
So
really important. I like that a lot. Now, you've obviously been able to attract A-level players to your team at Learnit. How do you build a great team?
How do I build a great team? If there's one thing I'm most proud about at Learnit is our team, and it's our team and it's our alumni. And so how I've been able to build with the help of my other leaders at Learnit is, first and foremost, we look for people who align with our values. What does Learnit value, which is lifelong learning, embracing change, acting as owners and rallying around the customer. I'm more likely to hire people, Michael, when possible, for a potential over experience. I want somebody I could come in and, help learn and grow and evolve. And that's really the main thing we do is we look for people who are a great culture fit. And when they're in, and I think we talked about this before we went live here, is I like to focus on people's strengths. What are you strong at? I think you could get a lot more greater bang for your buck if you focus on people's strengths than you do their weaknesses. And sometimes individuals will come in to Learnit. They're a great culture fit, they work really hard, but we had one individual, this guy named Joe Patty, came from New Jersey, great guy, started off in sales, super great fit for Learnit, failed completely. But instead of, just saying, hey, Joe, let's part ways, him and I sat down, got curious. We talked about where can you benefit Learnit and what do you love to do? And he talked about his computer science degree that he has, that his love of acting. And now, 6 years later, he's one of the best instructors we've ever had. Wow. So I think building great teams comes down to making sure you get the right people, giving them the space and opportunity to fail, and then figuring out what their strengths are. Another thing is, and I don't know how this works with fraternities and sororities and whatnot, but is we have a massive alumni network now where I get all kinds of referrals. People are always calling me and texting me, whether it's clients or ex-employees, saying, hey, I got somebody who would be a great fit for Learnit, because they know the type of organization and type of people we look for. Mm-hmm. And so that's pretty much how over the years, made some mistakes, of course, but that's over the years how we've been able to build great teams. Some people stay forever. Some people stay for 3 or 4 years or 2 years, but then they're always going to be part of the Learnit alumni long-term.
That's great. I love how you were able to repurpose Joe and basically put him in a spot that he could be successful at and is
Yeah,
successful at. Part of the challenge is understanding what their strengths are and making sure they're sitting in the right seat on the bus. It
absolutely.
might not be the driver of the bus. It might be, some other position on the bus, but that's part of your role as CEO is to make sure that you have the right people sitting in the right seats. And sometimes it's just a matter of repurposing them and using them in a spot where they're going to excel, knowing what their strengths are. And so good on you for spotting that and figuring out how to best use Joe for the ultimate advantage at Learnit. I think that's really cool.
but
Now,
there's sometimes but there's sometimes people just aren't a good fit,
sure,
and they're struggling, and so you don't need to find a position for everybody, right? Sometimes you just got to make the tough decision and part ways, and
sure,
that's okay, right? That's okay. That's what your job as a leader is to do, is to put the best team on the field at all times.
right.
And if somebody's not a good fit, great. In this particular case, Joe was the right fit. I just needed to find the better position for him.
Right. Yeah, you're absolutely right. I mean, it kind of goes back to those core values that you talked about. I mean, that really is what drives this whole thing. If you've got the right values and you want to work hard, I'll figure out what your strengths are so that way we can continue working together. But yeah, if there's not a fit in terms of values or you're not willing to work hard, then obviously that's where we got to, look to part ways because it's just not a culture fit for what it is that we're trying to build here. And there's another really interesting saying out there. It's Sir Richard Branson. He says, "Screw it, let's do it," as a decision-making approach. So when do you go by this mantra of "Screw it, let's do it," and when should we not use that mantra?
Yeah, well, that's a great question, and what I look at it as, there's a term I call purposeful awfulizing. And what I mean by purposeful awfulizing is, let's say that there's a decision. Let's say you have to decide what college you're going to go to. Is
Mhm.
that a knee-jerk reaction? No. I would look at a year out and think about, what is the worst case scenario if this decision doesn't go well. In business, let's say, okay, I'm considering acquiring this company. Well, if I take on too much debt, could this possibly put us out of business? Now, in the worst case scenario, if the worst case scenario is something that you can't live with, then you need to go back to the drawing board, and you can't do the screw it, let's do it. But if it's an relatively easy situation and you could live with the worst case scenario, then you go for it. As a leader of any organization, I think it's important to be able to be decisive and make decisions. Jeff Bezos says, if you have 70% of the information, you need to move forward and make the decision. So that's typically what I look at when it comes to the screw it, let's do it. I made some very poor decisions over the years because I didn't look at the long-term consequences when it comes to work. And, fortunately, I've been able to either been bailed out or helped, but it's really taught me to really put some thought into important decisions.
Yeah, I like that a lot. And you're absolutely right. I mean, are there decisions that I've made in my career that have not worked out? Absolutely. No question about it, right? And I think what Jeff Bezos was alluding to is the fact that we're never going to have 100% of the
Yep.
information. I mean, we can sit, I know people that, basically wait for like the perfect opportunity where everything, they have 100% of the information. You'll never have 100% of the information. It's never going to happen. So at some point, you got to make that decision to move forward and just accept that, yeah, maybe in hindsight, we say, okay, I didn't know about X.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And so that was a bad decision. I didn't know that at the time when I made the decision. Right. Otherwise, obviously, I would have made a different decision, but I didn't know that. So yeah, I think Jeff is right on. I think if you can get, 70%, go for it. And I also think, perfection is kind of, the enemy of what is it, of success or whatever, what have
Mm-hmm.
you. A
Better
lot of
done
people
than
are also,
perfect.
yeah, perfect. I mean, it's better done than perfect a lot of times.
Mm-hmm.
And I know people that chase perfection and only want to release their website or release their business when everything is 100% perfect. It's never going to be 100% perfect. You have to release it, beta test it, make adjustments. And you know what? My website for my business has evolved literally 1,000 times since we started the business in 2015. It's going to evolve. The business business is going to evolve. Okay. Just go into it knowing that.
Mhm.
And so what if you don't get everything 100% right from the onset? It's okay. You're learning. That is the key.
That is such a key statement for your listeners out there. I mean, I've got this gentleman on our media team, really quick story, who when he first came to Learnit, young kid out of St. Mary's, and he wouldn't release any of the videos until they were absolutely edited perfectly.
Yeah.
And I'm like, Michael, we have to, I'm telling you, it's okay, and 5 years later, he's getting stuff out all the time now, right? And I'm so proud of him because he's realized to just kind of let go a little bit and learn and iterate as time goes on. You're never going to get things perfect. And as somebody who's a CEO and a lot of other leaders, we don't want you to get things perfect. We want you to take chances. We want you to, take risks, try things, evolve, iterate. That all comes back to what we talked about, the learn it all leader, right? Is just learn and continue to grow and evolve.
I love it. Very, very well done. This has been a great interview here. Now, my weakness is really good food. I love good food, and I sense that you do as well. And
Yeah.
San Francisco is one of my favorite cities. I mean, it is an absolutely stunning city. My wife and I have been there many, many times. We actually started before we had kids. That was one of our favorite places to go. Is just to rent a car in San Francisco. We would do a little bit of Napa Valley in the north, start there, and then head all the way down south, down to San Diego and the San Diego Zoo, and just that ride, with it's phenomenal, and that's all I can say. You have to do that many, many times over. But knowing that San Francisco is one of my favorite cities, the restaurants, I mean, they change all the time. So where should I go for a great meal these days in San Francisco?
Well, Mike, if you and your wife head out here, make sure you give me plenty of notice because I'd love to take you to the House of Prime Rib.
Nice.
Uh, it's so funny though. You call House of Prime Rib today, you're not going to get into like the end of January at 9 p.m. on a Wednesday night. That
Right.
place just prints money. So anybody who wants to see a classic San Francisco restaurant, go to House of Prime Rib. Another great date place would be Kakari, a great Greek restaurant.
Yeah.
For those of us on a budget, there's some great pizza places in North Beach. Go check out Tony's Pizza or Golden Boy Pizza. So San Francisco is full of culture, full of restaurants,
Mhm.
and yeah, there's a lot of great choices. Like I said, I'm a diehard fan for House of Prime Rib.
Yeah.
So
All right, I'll give you as much notice as I can because I know we're not going to be able to get a reservation right away. So I need to
yeah,
give you like a couple of months notice in order to get a good reservation there. But that's okay. That's all right. We'll make that work. All right.
awesome.
So if our student listeners, if they want to connect with you, if they want to bring you in as a speaker on their campus, maybe they want to buy your book. It's called The
Mhm.
Learn It All Leader: Mindset, Traits, and Tools. Where should they go in order to connect with you and take next steps with you?
So the easiest thing to do is connect with me on LinkedIn at Damon Lembi. I also have an Instagram, but I'm much more active on LinkedIn. And I recommend to your listeners that they get their LinkedIn pages going now in college, for sure. As far as my book, Barnes and Noble, Amazon, anywhere you get a book. My company website is learnit.com. And here's the thing: if you've listened to this episode and you want, and not that you're already taking enough classes as it is, but if you want a free class, go to the Learnit website and send me a message on my LinkedIn page, and I'll give you a free $250 class. Anything from, business writing to emotional intelligence to if you want to learn how to use Python. So send me a message and take the class. And the only thing I ask is that you show up, engage, and that you give me your honest feedback.
Wow, that's a great offer that Damon has just made to our listeners. Make sure you connect with him on
Mhm.
LinkedIn. It's Damon Lembi, and send him a message. Tell him which course you want to go through at Learnit, and he's going to do that for you for free. Talking about a $250 value. All you need to show up and just give him feedback. I mean, there's nothing better
I
than
mean it. Yeah.
there's nothing better. So there you go. I hope a lot of our students are going to take advantage of it. They're always looking to learn new skills. And you know what? Now over the break, this is the
Yeah.
perfect time for them to take an extra class over the break and just keep engaged and learn something new. Maybe it is Python coding.
Mhm.
Whatever it is, learn something new over the break that you can go back to school in the spring and say, you know what? This is what I worked on over the break. It's a perfect opportunity. Really, really good. All right, Damon, listen, man, I appreciate all the time today. This has been a lot of fun. Thank you so much for sharing all this great information with our listeners.
Mike, thanks for having me and keep doing great work.
I will, I promise. And to our listeners, if you enjoyed this conversation with Damon, I want you to like this on social media. I also want you to share it with other college students on your campus, because I think this is great information here that other students on your campus need to know. We hope to see you on another episode of the Fraternity Foodie Podcast. Thanks for joining us, and we will see you next time.